Well, the situation between India and Pakistan continues to be increasingly tense. To give us a sense of where things presently stand from an international perspective, Colonel Jeffrey Fisher. Colonel Fisher comments extensively on security issues around the world. Thanks very much, Colonel, for being with us. From where you are, is it your sense that India and Pakistan may be headed towards some sort of a military clash?
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me on your show. I think that the tea leaves are not looking good, right? Between both sides, and it doesn't seem like the escalation's taking any pause. It's just it's continuing to ramp up.
Colonel, both India and Pakistan are nuclear armed. India says that there has always been this nuclear blackmail which has been done by Pakistan, and that clashes in the recent past have always taken place underneath that umbrella, that essentially that's a bluff. Is that something that India can safely rely on, in your opinion?
I don't know if it's something you can rely on, but I would tell you that when nuclear weapons came around, the issue wasn't an issue of if they were going to use them or not, because as soon as you use a nuclear weapon, the war's you've lost the war. The whole launching a nuclear weapon or taking conventional military operations underway. So it's not a guarantee. I mean, if someone wants to end the world, that's the button they can push.
Colonel Fisher, has enough been done in the West, in countries like the United States, to deal with Pakistan, which has been very much the center of global terrorism?
I think the United States has a difficult balancing act. But I would tell you that what I really like, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, India and the United States has built a very good relationship recently, and there's a lot of military assets from the U.S. military industrial complex that's made its way into India, to include the P-8 Poseidon, to include the MQ-9, and that military relationship with the United States is growing and fostering. So it heartens me to actually see that India and the United States are partnering in this kind of way and building a relationship. I think that will bring some level of stability in the long run to that region.
On the other hand, if there is a military clash, there's every possibility of US-built F-16s fighting against Indian Air Force fighters. We've seen that in 2019 as well. Now, Pakistan is authorized to use F-16s in the fight against terrorists. But AMRAAM-armed F-16s don't quite qualify in a mission against India, and yet that's where they will be used. So a contradiction there.
Yeah, it's easy to say that the weapon system can be used, right? But when we start talking about the individual weapons that are associated with the fighter, in this case, the fighter jet, right, the F-16 Viper or Falcon, it's hard to argue that an AMRAAM, which is an air-to-air missile that you've alluded to, the AIM-120, would somehow be used to be able to fight terrorists, because I don't know too many terrorists that are flying, fourth generation or fifth generation fighter jets.
What more can be done to enhance the relationship militarily and strategically between India and the United States? I dare say one of the key points in the relationship is intelligence sharing. How important is that in an hour like this from an Indian standpoint?
Intelligence sharing is everything, especially at the very beginning of a war, right? If you can figure out the enemy's ground order of battle, air order of battle, electronic order of battle, which is interesting because I'm sitting at the Association of Old Pros, the European conference right now, where we talk about electronic warfare nonstop. If you can map these things out before the war starts, you have an amazing advantage because those first strikes usually dictate how the war can continue.
There has been an evolution in warfare. We've seen extensively the use of drones in the Russia-Ukraine war. I ask about drones specifically because Pakistan's all-weather ally China is arguably the largest manufacturer of drones, a lot of which would have entered Pakistan's arsenal, from relatively large reconnaissance drones to smaller tactical drones. In the event of clashes between India and Pakistan, do you believe that drones would have a role in the fighting?
Yeah, topic number one here at this conference that I'm in is drone warfare, and how jamming, the electromagnetic spectrum, controlling of these drones plays into the current war. And nations out there often try and study the last war and prepare to fight the last war, and that doesn't often work because innovation happens, tactics, techniques, and procedures change. There are advancements in the battle space, and that advancement actually during warfare takes place quite rapidly, right? And as we've seen in Iraq and in Ukraine and Russia, I think that both sides, I would argue that I think India has probably built a lot of drones as well and are preparing to use them. So, should this war kick off, I think that's going to be a key aspect.
There is the entire naval aspect of this as well. The Indian Navy among the largest now in the world, and quantitatively and qualitatively larger than the Pakistan Navy. But if India were to respond to the Pahalgam terror attacks with a naval strike on Pakistan, that would be way up the escalation matrix. How do you figure that an act like that, a naval strike, would be seen?
Yeah, when warships fight, it's a big deal, right? And when I'm not talking about fast boat drones shooting rockets or things like that. I'm talking about when no kidding, conventional Navy assets, warships start firing at each other. This is, as you pointed out, it's massively up the escalation ladder, and from there you're going to probably start seeing air assets come in because the easiest way to secure the surface of our naval surface fleet is by air, right? You're going to want to bring in your own fighter jets. You're going to want to be able to secure those types of things.
And a final question to you, Colonel, as someone experienced and in having been a soldier and an officer yourself, you can't always right-size a strike, a military strike, can you? I ask this because there is often a sense that Pakistan's done this, and many over here in my country believe that we can retaliate. It'll be short and swift. Some would suggest that it doesn't necessarily happen that way with military conflicts.
That's true. I would tell you that there's a lot of indications that Vladimir Putin believed that he was going to be in a 3-day war with Ukraine, and we're on 3 years of a 3-day war. So war is not something to move into lightly. I would also say that military commanders, whether they be on your side or be on the Pakistani side, they go to war with what they have. They don't go to war with what they want. Usually a commander wants way more than he has access to. I'm a big fan from the Colin Powell era, where if you're going to go to war, go decisively, immediately, and overwhelm your enemy to the point where you can punish them to where whether we look at the first war in Iraq, Desert Storm, or we look at the war in Serbia, Allied force, these wars ended relatively fast. We're talking 2 to 3 months because there was just so much overwhelming force brought to bear against the enemy that there was no option other than capitulation.
All right, Colonel Fisher, great speaking to you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Thanks very much indeed.